Work, for the night is coming. Work through the morning hours. Work while the dew is sparkling. Work mid springing flowers. Work when the day grows brighter. Work in the glowing sun. Work, for the night is coming. When man's work is done. Work, for the night is coming. Work through the sunny dew. Fill bright stars with labor. Rest comes sure and soon. Give every flooding minute something to keep in store. Work, for the night is coming. When man's works no more. Work, for the night is coming. Under the sunset skies, while their bright tints are glowing. Work, for daylight flies. Work till the last beam faded, faded to shine no more. Work while the night is darkening, when man's work is o'er. Fine singing, you may be seated. Please turn your hymnals over to page number 384. Page number 384. Sing out on In the Service of the King. Page number 384. I am happy in the service of the King. I am happy, oh so happy. I have peace and joy that nothing else can bring. In the service of the King. In the service of the King.
Sunday. If you're able to meet with me Sunday night or Sunday at 4:30, it'll be in the bulletin. And but we need just to cover a couple things real quick to get things moving there. And I request that you didn't get that in the bulletin last Sunday. If you're not able to meet, I understand it is late notice. Other than that, I think that covers most of our announcements. Everything else has been in the bulletin. You can always check the band out. Sister Ball, did you get the new Mother's Day and CCS thing in the calendar?
I did not get the other one changed because I didn't know what time.
7. Everything at Calvary. I don't even know what you're talking about.
Is the Mother's Banquet I got changed, but the other one I did not.
Okay, yes, CCS, I believe everything at CCS and CDC is 7 o'clock. You can almost bank on it. Almost bank on it. So, how many of you saw the wonderful things about gasoline today? Wasn't that exciting? How many of you didn't look at the gas prices today? You didn't look? 40 cents up. Up. Yeah, Jeannie went from to, yeah. So take that. They're getting ready for summer where you can buy more gas. So pray for one another as we go into through spring and into summer. Brother Wayne, pray for his bees. They're being silly. And I have a bee joke. I found out the punchline. And I know you've been on pins and needles waiting. Jacob, get out pen and paper, son. This is gold. Okay? Gold, man. You meet some girl sometime, you go off to college, meet a girl, you just look at her and just pull out the book of my jokes. And she'll be like, honey, she'll just melt. All right. I went to the bee store the other day, Brother Wayne decided, I think I'm going to be like Brother Manuel and be a beekeeper. Because it gives more money than it takes. Did you like that? It gives more money than it takes. So I go in and they said, what do you want? I said, I want bees. And they said, really? Okay. Do you want a hive? I said, no, I just want 12. 12 bees will be enough for me. Just give me an even dozen. And she brings out the bees, and then they're in a little glass container. And I said, huh? And I said, no, I don't know what that is. She said, that's a freebie. All right. I've been saving all week for that one, and I had to look. All right. We're in chapter number 39, lesson number 103. We're going to talk about prison tonight, and we'll talk about Joseph. He's going to be thrown in prison. He's going to be lied about, and it's going to be pretty awful for him. Let's get right into it. Genesis 39, number 14. That she called unto the men of the house and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass, when he heard that I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got him out. And she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came. My eyes are doing tricks on me. Let me turn this just a little bit. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servants, which thou hast brought unto us, came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. It came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. Now, it's an interesting thing here. Throughout Scripture, we see some interesting terms about wrath kindled. If you look at his anger was kindled or wrath was kindled, typically it has a couple words after that. his wrath was kindled against him. Do you notice here? It doesn't say who it was kindled against. It doesn't say whether it was against Joseph, and that's where we assume it would be. It doesn't say the circumstance, and it doesn't say his wife. It just says he's angry. We would assume that it would be against Joseph, but it's not clear there. And Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound. That's an important phrase. We'll talk about that. And he was there in prison, in the prison. But the Lord was with Joseph and showed him mercy. Now remember, grace is giving us what we don't deserve, giving beyond what we deserve. Mercy is withholding of what we could have or deserved judgment. In this way, this would be holding back man's judgment upon him. Though he was in prison, God was still protecting him. Verse number 22, and the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. Now I want you to think about this, and we'll get to this in a little bit. These aren't just your normal prisoners. This isn't for the Barabbases of the area of Egypt. This isn't for those of the lowliest type of prisoners. This was a prison that was a little different than the average prison. We'll talk about that in a minute. And verse number 23, the keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand. How many of you have had managers like that? They never told you a thing to do other than their job. And that's really what Joseph's doing. He's doing the manager or the guard. He's doing his job. And I picture this guy in his little office, which I know he didn't have a little office, but hey, it's my mind, leave it alone. And I'm picturing him in there just sitting around playing on his phone. Of course, he didn't have one. I don't know what they played with back then. Maybe they had checkers and he played checkers against himself. But he did something, and he didn't look to anything with the prisoners. Joseph was in charge of all the prisoners. Now, there's not a whole lot to do in prison other than take care of prisoners. That's kind of the main thing. And Joseph was doing the work. Because the Lord was with him, and that which he did, the Lord made to prosper. I like this because continually Joseph shows that it is God's blessing. And here Scripture brings everything good that is happening to Joseph. All those things are coming by way of the Lord. Everything bad has come from sinful people. And everything good has come from the Lord, and the Lord hasn't left him. All right, let's get into the lesson before I give it all away. And Joseph was falsely accused by the scorned wife of Potiphar. He was in prison. Seeing Potiphar's authority, rank, and position, one would question why he allowed this slave to live. That's our number one question. That's always been my question. Why did Potiphar not kill him? He had the authority. He had the power. And Joseph was a slave. At that, he was a Hebrew slave, which was very uncommon. It's not like there would be a rise up of the Hebrew people to attack Potiphar in his house. No, this is just one boy standing here trying to abuse his wife. It could be that he loved the law so much that Potiphar wasn't going to break the law. Could be because of his position. Well, we don't know, but he doesn't slay him, and I'm sure he had the power to. Possibly he put more trust in Joseph than he did his bride. You say, well, I don't believe that. You don't have to. It's not Bible. But my mind goes to, is there a chance? Number one, we don't see who Potiphar's anger is kindled against. And now we see that he doesn't have this man who tried to take advantage of his wife put to death. And he doesn't just throw him in a prison. He throws him in a specific prison, and there's debate there too, but we'll get to it. I keep wanting to jump ahead. Potiphar chose a specific prison because it was the harshest environment. This is a prison that's going to be for those who have broken laws to the state. And we'll get to that here in a minute too. I keep saying that, and I need to just stay with my notes. One notes the shrewd wording of Potiphar that Mrs. Potiphar used before Potiphar. So Mrs. Potiphar comes up, and she begins to tell Potiphar this. She called unto the men, first she tells the men of her house, and spake unto them, saying, See, he hath brought in an Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me, and I cried with a loud voice. I bolded these letters because this is a very cunning, manipulative woman. Her wording is masterfully chosen. If she didn't think about what she was going to say before she said it, if she said this off the cuff, I guarantee you this wasn't her first time to lie and try to manipulate people. We note 3 points that she made. She made a point to include others in her deception. Truly, Joseph would not have been in a similar circumstance with Potiphar's servants. He would have been in a similar circumstance with Potiphar's servants as he was when his brother. Again, he was exalted, and they were not human nature. Whoa, wow, I really messed that paragraph up. I apologize. He was exalted, and human nature would suggest that these servants would have everything to gain by Joseph being gone. Well, let me say what I was supposed to write. So Joseph comes up, and the first thing Mrs. Potiphar does, she brings in the other servants. What's she trying to do? She's doing what you and I try to do. When I have with a brother, it's better for me sinfully to go to someone else and get everybody to agree with me instead of go and try and fix it. Mrs. Potiphar thought, I need to get as many people on my side as I can. I need to accuse Joseph to others who don't like Joseph. Joseph is in a very similar circumstance. He is blessed. Now think about this. You've been working for some time for Potiphar, and here comes this little Hebrew boy. And Potiphar really likes him. You work hard for Potiphar. You've worked there for a long time. You've served. And then all of a sudden, here comes Potiphar with Joseph, and Joseph becomes management. And you get passed by. How are you going to feel? Well, you're not going to like it. I don't believe these slaves liked Joseph much, and I believe she called them on purpose because they'll take my side. Go on, and it's when Potiphar's wife addressed the other men of the house, she is sure to address the servants as being mocked as well. She changes her terminology at the bottom of the passage to me and I. But at the beginning of the verse, she doesn't talk about me and I. He's brought this Hebrew in to mock me. Oh, she says that to Potiphar. She doesn't say that to the men. She brought him in to mock us. We're a household. And Mrs. Potiphar just loved her slaves. That was just the type of person she was. So she grouped herself together to get them to believe her story. And this is a good sales tactic for her to make sure that she was relatable to these servants. You'll hear salespeople use this tactic all the time. We and us, and No, sometimes it's just you. Joseph hadn't done anything to mock these other servants, had he? No. This was just a false accusation against him with no founding, but she needed them to despise him. She needed them to dislike him to give gravity and strength to her lie. As a good sales tactic, she looked at her devotion to her husband lightly. She looked at Joseph as an object owned, so likely she did not often normalize her status to that of slave. So if she treats her husband in this way, enough to lie about him and to cheat on him, and she would treat Joseph as just an object that she owns, then we understand that she was not going to be relatable to slaves, that she was just one of the slaves. This is us. That just wasn't in her nature by everything that we know about her. She chose the right audience. This also ensured that her accusation could not go unaddressed. Sometimes you just hate for words to come out of people's mouths, because as soon as they do, they will walk away, but you can't. You know you can't. They know you can't. Around Calvary, folks will say, well, I got a problem here and a problem there. Typically, my first thing I say is, okay, don't tell me the person. You just go tell them to come in and we'll just hash it out, the three of us. I don't want you to tell me your side. Don't tell me the problem ahead of time. If you really want reconciliation, you go to the brother. If they won't hear you, then you come in to pastor and say, I don't want to talk about the circumstance. I just want us to meet together. And so if I'm wrong, I've got an impartial judge. And if I'm wrong, I'll change. If you see flaws in me, tell me. If I did this wrong, tell me. What a lot of people do, and a lot of pastors allow it, is Brother Steve has a problem with Sister Carla, which I have no idea how he could, but he would come to pastor and say, she knows I hate chicken rice, and she makes it 4 times a week. Why would she make something she knows I hate? And she's doing it out of spite. She makes cookies for the kids at school, but she doesn't make me any cookies. Pastor, is that right? Well, man, I like her cookies too, but it sounds like you got a point there. Well, I'm bringing her in, and let's get... Carla, you going to enjoy that meeting? Sure. Oh, yeah, well, yeah. I'm not going to enjoy it. I've told folks they'll come in and I say, you all know that I'm the guy that loses, because you'll all be mad at me at the end and you'll be okay with each other. And she comes in and she's going to feel ganged up on. Well, that's not the way to do it. That's exactly what Mrs. Potiphar is trying to do. She is putting Potiphar in a circumstance where he cannot walk away from this. If she came up and said, Potiphar, honey, this is what that awful Hebrew did. He's a bad man. He could have went and asked Joseph, and Joseph said, Mr. Potiphar, this is what really happened. Mr. Potiphar probably had a good idea what his wife was like. This probably wasn't the first time. We don't know that through Scripture. So, if she had just told him, he could have swept it under the rug and done nothing about it. And she wanted to make sure that wouldn't happen. She made sure that she had folks that did not witness the event, but she told them about it. Potiphar had no choice but to react to what she was saying. So, This accusation would not be dissimilar to Adam in the garden. Whoops, I skipped some. She then places blame on Potiphar. Not only did Joseph do this, but Potiphar, don't you forget, you brought this evil Hebrew into our house. You brought him in. This is your fault for giving him to us. Well, that's not dissimilar to what Adam did in the garden. Oh, Lord, this is the woman thou hast given me. You gave me this woman, and she gave me the fruit, and I took it because, why wouldn't I? You gave her to me. Now, Potiphar is standing there. His wife is saying, this is what happened, and you're to blame. That's a pretty harsh accusation from this evil woman. The goal was to bring shame, reproach, and anger to Potiphar. She's stirring him up. Well, let me just tell you something. Don't get your husbands all stirred up. You shouldn't manipulate your husband to get him angry. It just shouldn't be. And you say, oh, that doesn't happen. I've met wives. They knew exactly what to do to get their husbands hopping mad. And we ought not try to get folks angry. I walked through at college, and it was sinful. I walked up to the door, and I looked in, and these guys in the common room, they were in there playing rook. And I peeked in, they're laughing, having a good time. I know you're going to find this hard to believe of me. I told my buddy, I said, look at them having fun. He said, yeah, they're having a good time. I said, watch. I walked in and gave about 3 looks at 2 or 3 of them, whispered something to my buddy and walked off. Within 5 minutes, they were fighting. I said, isn't that so easy to change the entire temperament of a room? That was evil. Don't do those types of things. Potiphar's wife had a goal. She wanted him to be angry. She attacks Joseph's nationality. She wasn't one of them. He wasn't one of them, nor was he a common slave. He had no one to come to his rescue. He was a foreigner in a foreign land. Joseph had no one that Mrs. Potiphar could see. Mrs. Potiphar saw a boy that refused her sinful desires, who was alone. She didn't realize God was with him, and the same God that had blessed her and Potiphar's house, of course, her being the overflow, Potiphar getting the overflow of the blessings. She didn't realize the God that did that is going to stay with him. Here's an interesting question. It's not in my notes, but I often wonder, what happened to Potiphar's house after this? And that's an interesting question for you young people. Not many teenagers here tonight. But when you leave the cup of God's blessing, when you go out on your own, you say, well, I'll do things my way. Oh, you can. But you might not understand the blessing that God has given to your home because of your daddy. God's blessing is being poured out on your parents, and you are receiving the overflow. But one day, Elijah, you'll be your own cup, and you'll have to make that decision. Japheth will be his. You thought I was just going to pick on Elijah. No, I was coming for you, man. I got one more teenage boy in here. I'll hit him too. Japheth will have to be his. We used to call it, Brother Gamble, being your own man. Be a man. Be your own man. No, be your own godly gentleman who loves the Lord and has his cup flipped right side up. So God can bless you. See, right now, Eli, you thought I was going to forget you? I did it. You're going to have to step out and ask for God to bless you. Now, he may be already because of your faithfulness. I don't know. But he may be. But here's the thing. One day, you'll know. Because you're going to have to stand up as a man and choose good or evil. Obedience, disobedience. And then Dad, Mom's cup is over here. Are you going to be a saucer all your life? Hoping that maybe some will splash out, get over on the cup? Or on the saucer? No, at some point you have to say, I want God's blessing on me, and I am willing to do whatever he asks me to do that I might be blessed of him. Right now, the Bible says you give to the Lord, and you can see that the windows of heaven will be opened, and he'll bestow blessings that you can't even contain. I'm going to get off track just a minute. Brother Brown, Jim Brown, talked about picking cotton as a boy. And he would get a bag, and he'd go and he'd pick cotton. He said it was awful. And so he'd fill that bag, drag that bag. Do you remember that, Brother Ramey, when he preached that? Drag that bag to Dad. Dad, it's full. His dad would take his big hand, push it down, said, boy, that's not even half full. Give it back to him. He'd drag the bag back to the field. I like moving around, so he has to adjust that camera. And he'd drag it back to the field. Okay, Dad, it's full now. I even pushed it down. His daddy would say, take both hands or take his knee and push it down, said, go fill it. He'd do it again, and finally he said he'd get to the place where Dad would take his foot, put it in there with all his might, shove his foot in there. He said the seams of the bag that the cotton was in would start to give, and the cotton would start poking out through the seams of the bag. And then they'd tie it off, and it was just bulging with cotton. I think that's the way God does with us. We do. Oh, Lord, you've blessed me so much. Oh, you've not even seen what I'm going to give to you. I'm going to bless you even more. So she blames his nationality. What's that have to do with what I was saying? Because she was leaving. She got rid of the cup. And now they were going to go back to an unblessed home, an unblessed heathen home. Joseph was thrown into prison. This was called the Round House, most likely a subterranean dungeon of sorts. And the keeper of the prison, Genesis 39:22, committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison, and whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The round prison in verse number 22 means round or dungeon. In verse 14 of 41 of the book of Genesis, then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. The word is changed there. And if you look into your Strongs, the actual term is changed. And he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. Here the word dungeon means pit or hole. Joseph was thrown into prison. This was called a round house, most likely the dungeon of sorts. Of brick-built walls likely rose above the ground and were covered by a vaulted roof, usually kind of an inverted bowl shape at the top. Many believe this to be a specific governmental prison for prisoners of the state. This is thought, so due to the type of prisoners that we will later see incarcerated with Joseph, that these were prisoners that had offended either high-ranking officers, they had offended Pharaoh. This was not just your normal prison. We get this from 105:17 of the book of Psalms, that most people believe this was even a worse prison. My mind goes, there was a woman that was pretty famous. She makes towels. I think you can buy her towels. And different things, used to sell a lot of her stuff at the Kmart's. And anyway, she went to prison. I don't remember what she did. You all know who I'm talking about? Yeah, you know. Okay, she was a good steward. And she went to prison. Well, everybody complained about the prison because she had such a cushy prison, which I didn't even know there were such things as cushy prisons, but apparently there are. And she went to prison. So we think if you're well-to-do, that you would go to a better prison. Well, no, this was opposite. You've offended the state. It's one thing if you offend a citizen. You offend the state, we're talking North Korea stuff. You're going to the worst of the worst. Remember that man, that boy took that propaganda off the wall to take it home with him as a souvenir in North Korea? Took one poster down. And they like to beat him to death. And imprisoned him and everything else. The one boy they brought back, and he barely made it down the stairs from the airplane. And what? Before the end of the week, he was dead. There was nothing we could do to save him. They sent him back to the States to die. That's not in our mentality. Joseph's thrown in a dungeon. He was thrown, we would call it more like a pit. And here he is, and we get that from Psalm 105, 17 and 18. He sent a man before them, even Joseph, who was sold for a servant, whose feet they hurt with fetters. He was laid in iron. And now we have, again, the likeness of Joseph to Christ, and how they fettered, they chained him. This was not a place of ease for Joseph, as the imprisonment of Christ was not a place of ease for him either. Joseph was pure and innocent, yet imprisoned again. Joseph lived with a good conscience. He did not change his character through though wrongfully accused, persecuted, or imprisoned. Joseph never changed his character. You know, we teach the young people here at Calvary Baptist Church, your character is what and who you are when nobody's watching. And Sean, I've missed you. You're going to have to be your own cup. You can't always be a saucer. I didn't want you to feel left out. You were hiding back there, and I saw you. But no matter what happens, my character is the same. I'm a man of character. I'm going to make right decisions in front of you, and my character is I'll do right when no one's watching. That was Joseph. Nobody was watching but the sinner enticing him. He did right. He's in prison. He does right. He's thrown in a pit. He does right. He's sold as a slave. He does right. He just wasn't going to stop. Side note, a person of character will not be swayed by the trials that man puts on him. A man of character or a person of character outside of prison will be a man of character inside prison. That's a pretty big statement. I'll be a man of character here. You throw me in prison, I'll be a man of character there. I will be righteous out here. I will be righteous in there. My circumstances don't change my spirituality. I will stand fast. 2 Corinthians 4, 8, and 9. We are troubled on every side, yet not distressed. We are perplexed, but not in despair. Persecuted, but not forsaken. Cast down, but not destroyed. The steps of a good man, in Psalm 37:23, are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth him with his hand. I have been young and now am old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. He is merciful and lendeth, and his seed is blessed. Depart from evil and do good, and dwell ever forevermore. God blessed Joseph, and he was promoted in prison. And today we can say, if I live righteously despite the circumstances that come my way, I'm never going to be cast down. I'll never be forsaken. He's always going to stand with me. You might be going through the fat and the fire right now. It might be that we're going through lesson 103. And this is the time that you needed this. You feel battered and beaten. You feel like you're fighting an uphill battle, like everyone's against you. And I understand those circumstances where it seems so dark. But it wasn't as dark as it was for Joseph. He just kept doing right. And he said, the Lord will take care of me. It's all in his hands. When we see the baker and the butler, he begins to show verbally his faith. To this point, it's been mostly about what they did to him. From the pit to now, we have one real testimony of Joseph. I can't do this to Potiphar and I can't sin against God. But once he gets to the prison, old Joseph, or gets out of prison, he begins to talk about the Lord, his faith and trust in him. Anchored in faith that is greater than my circumstance. All right, well, we'll get right into prayer meeting now.